So, Rob, you're here today as an investor, and at Capricorn Partners, you scaled numerous tech-based companies. And I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, what are the critical success factors of scaling bio-based innovation?
How much time we have?
Not enough.
Okay. Well, there's a few important factors, and I'll skip the obvious ones around finance, grants, blah, blah, blah. What we look at for scaling up is, do you have the right process data? Because the whole process development and scale up is a super underestimated factor. Even in large corporates today, this is always underestimated. The process development and scale-up is more art than science. If you look at scale-up formulas, they're not really exact. There are a lot of range and standard numbers and a lot of gut feel by the engineers. There's approaches of scaling up where you look at what's the scaling factor. Some people approach it from a scaling down. So if this is the large version, I just built a smaller version. And there are approaches that in some cases they can work. But when you truly look about innovative processes, there's always a few steps where you don't have data. So you try to set up experiments to get those data. But then the true art of process development comes into play, because it's like, which part of the scale-up do we don't know? And like when you make new molecules or you use new feedstocks, the physical properties of the mix are not known. If you work with hydrocarbons, then you have a very defined mix, and you can make very good estimates. In the bio-based innovation part, you often have very undefined mixtures, inhomogeneous mixtures, and also mixtures that are relatively unknown and with properties that are very difficult to predict. Process scale-up is where mass conversion, so conversion of a mass, and heat transfer take place at the same time, and that's very difficult to model. So we look at process scale-up of what are the critical experiments to do and to prove. In the really good startups, you see that they get that. And in other ones, you have to kind of push sometimes some people, or work with a process development company, work with an external one, which is sometimes difficult.
Is that because they don't have the knowledge in-house to be able to find that? Or?
So it's sometimes a resistance, but not by being resistant, but just by not knowing that it's needed.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's also developing that understanding of what do you need in what phase. And sometimes also in the board, we are with other investors. They're like, oh, that will take too much time. Let's push. Like, yeah, but if you don't know where to push, you may, probably 9 out of 10 times push the wrong things. So that's sometimes very difficult. It's also when you do large capital projects, in the first 10% of the time and expenditure, you define over 90% of the total cost. So to take a little bit of extra time is worth it. But this whole idea around venture capital, we got to be fast, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes I think the term venture capital, say biochemical, this type of investment is the wrong word. It's coming from digital, fintech, internet, and there you can do agile and minimum value proposition, that kind of stuff.
Imagine doing an MVP just for your scaling. I don't think that's the same.
It will likely explode.
I think in the bioeconomy, this is the biggest challenge, right? The patient capital, as they call it, right? They have to be even more patient than patient capital.
Yeah, but you have to be patient in the right phase. Yeah, and that process development phase is a super critical phase. But what you see is people already start to put lots of resources in business development, in market development, in marketing. I mean, LinkedIn marketing, like, wow. You know, and it's like, well, that you're successful on LinkedIn doesn't equate to success in real life. And the second thing is most of these markets are not winner takes all, are not first come to serve, etc. This is all a little bit of the fuzz that comes from this software type or finance type. You know, these type of venture capital. It's different markets.
So long R&D cycles, long sales cycles, right?
Yeah.
Much bigger investment scales that we're looking at here when you look at the CapEx, right? So,
and people think sometimes like, oh, corporates, you know, but in a corporate, a $100 million decision takes 4 to 5 years. So the venture capital industry, maybe we can do it in 3. But there's no way you can do this in 1 or 2 years. I've tried to explain it to some finance-oriented investors with creating human, okay? Woman get pregnant, takes 9 months. It's a very sequential process. You cannot take 9 women and 1 month each. You know, it doesn't work. So parallel processing is not possible. And this is what process development is. It's a serial process. And you can only go to the next stage once you've done the previous stage.
I think that's a great metaphor.
Well,
Rob, when we look at the different phases of startups and scale-ups, you mentioned that it's important to look at the right tools at the right time. When we look at this in terms of financial tools, what are the right, let's say, financial instruments in which phase?
So the debt phase comes in when you start to buy serious scale equipment and when you get your eyes that cash generation at some point is there. Before that time, it's very difficult to get debt. Before that, so it's almost all equity and grants. There is an area where government loans can help, especially if you have to go through that intermediate demonstration phase where nobody wants to pay for it. But these are not the easiest. And actually, a lot of these instruments are not there right now. Some governmental-related funding companies, they give these guaranteed loans, so loans with a back guarantee. That could help to get the debt in a little bit earlier, but that's difficult. You largely rely on equity and grants. And then having the right investor mix becomes very critical.
So that's where the CBJU, the 𝗍𝗍, all of these guys come in.
Oh, absolutely. And they're good instruments. They just sometimes take a long time, you know, and flexibility, etc. But I think Europe is trying to do the right thing and trying to come up and create more and more of these instruments.
I want to ask you something about the investment climate in Europe at the moment. So let's say in the last 5 years, this has had a bit of an up and down. We were more down than up.
I think the past year, this year is horrendous.
Yeah? How come?
Lots of uncertainties in the world. There is the Russia-Ukraine war, lots of money going to AI, defense technology, US politics that are pretty, I would say, irrational, unpredictable. That all gets a lot of attention. And that creates uncertainty, and that makes investors uncertain. And venture capital is the tail of the finance market. So if the tail goes a little bit up, we get a lot more money. If the tail gets a little bit down, it's a huge shrinkage of the market. And that's what we're experiencing right now. So the amount of money available is very little. Also because the industry hasn't seen a lot of exits. So a lot of funds don't have the returns. That makes it more difficult to get new funds. Funds don't have the returns, so they cannot reinvest the money. So it's pretty brutal right now. At the same time, if you go up on a macro level. And I did my first bio-based venture in 2008. So compared to from that period to today, it's a hell of a lot better.
2008 seems like also
that was also a tough time. What you see today is that the supporting ecosystem is much, much stronger. Bio-based Europe is one of the prime examples. So all across the world now you have more facilities, more understanding. The quality of the entrepreneurs and the startups and the ideas have improved a lot.
Compared to 8 years ago? 7 years ago? How do you see an event like Pitch Perfect impacting the entrepreneurship ecosystem in the bioeconomy?
I mean, if you look at how many investors are here today, that's quite a lot more than they used to be in the past. In the past, if you would take a poll in the audience, like who's an investor, you get 5 to 10 hands. And today you get a lot more. I think there's a lot more understanding of the sector. The sector, I mean, the bioeconomy is becoming real. I was at a refinery conference last week. If you go there 7, 8 years ago, they were not talking bio, like, whoa. But nowadays, about, I would say, 20% of the topics is processing, vegetable oils, processing bio feedstocks, looking at bio-SAF, biodiesel.
So there is a big change in the discourse and acceptance of the topic.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you have a final message to the innovators and specifically startup founders?
Be persistent, be stubborn. At the same time, look at what experience people can bring you. I see always a lot of bias to, we're going to get some young engineers, but engineering is really one of the professions where experience really, really counts. The good news is the big chemicals and oil companies have been laying off and doing early retirements for a lot of their experienced people. But these are the people that love their work, and they have so much experience that all these startups and entrepreneurs can use. I would really dig into that crowd.